Good morning, friends. Thank you all for coming back. Those of you who are back, welcome to anybody who is here for the first time. I know some folks are still getting their coffee and their treats. Thank you to Suzanne for bringing some extra food this morning. I was understating. Yeah, if you want to take any home. I do not need to be eating cheese all week, if that's what you brought. Do some front matter stuff first. Number one, those of you who are in the room, you'll notice over there, behind Melissa, is a newsprint where it asks, what do you want to talk or learn more about? Every time we do a series like this, right, in 45 minutes, we can only scratch like a bit of the surface. And also, my hope is that these conversations springboard us into where we might want to go deeper in the future. Like, where might we take one thing that we talked about in this series and then do a whole series just on that? In some ways, we've been kind of doing that. We've been kind of I don't know, whatever the metaphor is. We take one thing and then we kind of go deeper with it, and etc. So, as those come to you, or if things have already come up for you as you've gone through the series, please add them to that newsprint. Folks online, add those to the chat, and we will add those to the list as well. It's one of the goals we stated in the annual meeting for this year is to generate more vehicles for all of you to create more vehicles for all of you to generate ideas for what we do for spiritual growth classes and other kinds of programs. So please provide that. Recording in progress?
Yes.
Recording in progress. Last week, we forgot to hit record on this class, so now we have a slide to remind us to hit the record button. So just a reminder, or for those of you who might be here for the first time, right, the whole thing we're doing with this series is interrupting those kinds of thoughts of judgment about ourselves or others, with the idea that when we judge others, we are often actually perhaps even more harshly judging ourselves by that same standard. And that God's grace can interrupt on either side, either to interrupt judgment of self or judgment of others. And we've been kind of playing back and forth with that and talking about practices for interrupting those kinds of thoughts that keep us in that circle of judgment so that we can make room for God's grace. So at each session, we have also been doing a kind of three-part thing of identifying our judgments around the topic for the day, reframing our judgments, and then doing a practice exercise for building grace. Hey, we are in week 3, and we've already thrown out that structure because we're doing just something completely different. It didn't take very long for it to all break down. So number one thing we're going to do today is we're going to finish the activity that I introduced last week called Making a Nicodemus Space. Works well, though, because as I said last week, the topic of weirdos and the topic of foreigners kind of go together. We're going to talk about that more. But for the weirdos part, it's about individual differences, the differences we have as individuals. Then I'm going to talk for a bit, and then I'm going to give you yet another Bible-based practice, which I'll just distribute and explain a little bit, but we're not going to actually practice today because we won't have time for that. But it's also very, very simple, so you can just kind of take it and see what you want to do with it. All right. So those of you who were here last week, I asked you to do a little homework. So good on all of you who actually worked on that. And also, I realize not everybody would have done that. So we are going to have time for you to do this exercise in full. On your tables, and online folks, it should be in the chat as well, is this booklet that says Making a Nicodemus Space. The first thing I would like you to do is, where it says make an inventory, there are 8 areas covering pages 1, 2, and 3. Please complete that now for yourself, and then I'll give you further instructions. I think we can do this in, let's say, 7 minutes. Yes, sir.
Are you just supposed to answer one thing with each of these, or?
Nope. Whatever applies. Use this also to, if it jogs other things, don't be tied, right? Just like with the other questionnaires we've done, don't be tied to it. This is for you. So if you come up with other things, please just write them down. Could we start again in about another minute? Is that okay? Okay. If you're still finishing up, that's okay. Take one more minute, everybody, and now go back over your list. And if there's anything that you marked or wrote down that on reflection you're like, I don't know that I really feel comfortable sharing this with anybody in this room, then just put an X next to it, so you remember that. Okay? Hopefully that's not everything. But if it is, that's okay too. Okay, are we good to go? Alrighty. Folks in the room, please stand up. Oh no. He's gonna do this to us, isn't he? Yes, I am. I am not going to force you to do anything, but while you're standing, take a look at the other people in the room and maybe rearrange yourselves so that you partner with somebody you do not know that well. Don't need to be a complete stranger, but somebody you don't know that well, or might want to get to know a little bit better. If that person is sitting next to you, great. But if they're across the room, go ahead, I invite you to now move. And maybe point to them and say, you! And online folks are just going to do this together, right? Once you've found your partner, both of you sit down somewhere. You'll be able to go back to your seats after we're done.
Okay, should we brainstorm?
Alrighty, so now let me give you your instructions, which are also on page 4 on the back of your little booklet.
Hi, Susan. I think it's just you and me.
Hold on just a second, Susie.
Okay.
All right, so before I even tell you what you're going to do, I want to set out some norms. So what you're basically going to be doing is a one-on-one conversation, if you haven't caught on to that. And you're going to be having a conversation around the weird things you identified for yourself. If you recall, think back to last week, if you were here, the story of Nicodemus is the story of there was something weird in Nicodemus that he felt in himself. And he saw that Jesus himself was a weirdo. That's why he felt safe coming to Jesus to figure out or talk about or process or whatever he needed to do, whatever weird thing there was about him. Our weirdness is our bridge to other people. And so that's what we're doing in this conversation. It's artificial, right? But that's what makes it a practice, right? It's like the drills that a football player has to go through. Look at me making a sports analogy. The drills that a football player has to go to, right? The drills are not the game, right? I don't know what they do, but they're doing like dancey things, right? I've seen that, I think, right? But they don't do that in a game. They don't just play games in order to learn how to play football. They have to do specific drills. This is a drill. This is a practice so that we can then implement this in different ways in our lives. Okay, norms for these conversations. What is shared here stays here. We are the owners of our own stories. Nobody else gets to tell our story for us. We ask curious questions, not corrective ones, and we'll get more into questions and responses in a bit. We don't minimize. This is important because this is something I do all the time. I think it's something that just comes naturally to a lot of us. If somebody says something to you that is sharing their weirdness, please do not reply, "That's not so weird," or "That's not weird." That's what we mean by minimizing. And that applies to all sorts of things in life too. Like when somebody says, "Oh, I'm really disappointed in myself that I didn't get those emails sent out in time." And we want to, right, comfort them and say, "Oh, who cares about that?" And again, I do this all the time, and I need to stop doing it because what matters is that they cared about it, right? That's what we mean by minimizing. So no minimizing in these conversations. Don't pathologize or analyze. Don't say to the other person, "Well, that must be because your mother didn't love you," or something like that, right? You might think that, but maybe at least don't say that and maybe quietly dismiss that thought. And we can pass on any questions. So if there's anything that the other person's asking you, or if there's any point you're like, "I don't think I want to kind of go there right now," that's fine, right? That's fair. Okay. So the way to go is back and forth. So somebody's going to designate somebody partner A is just the person who's going to talk first, and the other person's partner B. Partner A finishes these sentences using the inventory that you just completed. So you're going to pick one way I'm weird or different is. You're just going to pick one thing from your inventory. "I sometimes hide this because, and when people misunderstand this, I tend to," or "it tends to be like for me." Then partner B, we're also kind of practicing active listening here, right? Partner B asks some open-ended questions like, "When did you first notice this about yourself? When does this feel like a gift? When does this weirdness feel like a superpower? When does it feel hard? When does it feel like a curse? And what helps you feel accepted in this area?" You're trying to deepen understanding, not solve anything. You're not trying to make it better for the other person. And then before switching, person B says something affirming or appreciative, like, "What I appreciated about what you shared is this. I can see how this shapes you because that actually makes me feel closer to you because," and then offers something limited. That might then naturally propel you into the next part, which is just flipping roles, right? So same procedure, but partner B then does in the left-hand column, partner A does the same thing. And then we'll see where we are at that point. It's 11:04. Let's do 12 minutes, and I'll tell you when you're at the 6-minute mark, so you can know that you should have switched by then. Make sense? Anybody have any questions about what we're doing? 12 minutes total for partner A and partner B. So, right, this isn't therapy. You don't get the full 50 minutes. This is a quick sharing conversation. All right, ready to go? Start.
Hi, Susie.
Hi, Susan.
So I think I understood most of it. Do you want to be partner A?
I wasn't here last week.
Oh, me neither. So we'll do this as an experiment together.
Okay, so we have to, but I didn't really understand what we were supposed to write down an inventory of our weirdness.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of going through that inventory, which I did do when we were on mute, I answered questions and things, and I think it's to get you to like a summary of, how I'm weird or how I'm different, and then walk through that. So, and then when you share, I ask you some of these questions.
Okay, yeah.
So
I got that.
Okay.
Okay. But I don't have enough. All I have is, well, read me one of your weirdnesses. You go first.
Yeah, I guess I can. I think a weirdness that I have, and it comes out in the energy, presence, and thinking process weirdness stuff, is that
Mhm.
I get to things a lot faster than others. And so like they say, read this. I read it, but I kind of skim it and then I'm like ready to go and I'm impatient
Oh,
with people because they're
yeah.
still trying to process and catch up. Um, and I can be dismissive of like the details that others are working through. I'm more into like the theme and kind of directionally where we're headed and kind of the big picture of stuff. And so then because people are a little behind where I'm at, I can come across as not kind or considerate because I'm already thinking of the implications. Like I already got it. I'm thinking of implications that people haven't got there yet. And I'm starting to blur it out, which then kind of makes me a know-it-all on the downside, right? So clearly I know that about myself.
Yeah. Oh, that's good that you know that.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
I don't I don't completely hide it. I kind of own it, but I have learned in group situations how to hold myself back, invite others to speak, right? Because otherwise I end up dominating. And I'm in a class, education for ministry with a group, and this is the fourth or fifth year. And so I'm getting better at like, so what did you think?
Uh-huh. Instead of coming in and ruling the roost.
Correct. And which is my tendency. And when people misunderstand me, it's because they don't know me very well. And so you can rub somebody wrong on this whole like know-it-all kind of thing. And so then they want
Oh,
to like
yeah.
avoid
Yeah.
me. And
Oh, yeah.
then I've hurt their feelings or I've said something that's, maybe got them distraught. So that's kind of a thing about me that's a little odd.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one. Um, I'm trying to think of me, but in some kind of different area. Um, I have a tendency to be um, an egomaniac with an inferiority complex.
Oh, what does that mean?
That means that I have, like, I think I look wonderful when I'm in the apartment, but then I look in the mirror and I think, oh my God, I'm so ugly, or I'm so fat, or I'm so this or that.
Oh,
So I have an egomaniac. I'm an egomaniac. I think I'm with this wonderful, beautiful person because I was younger and more beautiful and everything like that. And before that, I was verbally abused by my older brother about being ugly and stupid and fat and an idiot and all that. And that has stuck. So I always have a bad body image and facial image and everything. So, but then I've gone through periods where I've been really pretty, and I've so I've got these times in my life where I went out with like the good best looking guy and did all that stuff and hiked and camped and ran and being blonde and tan and all that. So I have this egomaniac perception with the inferiority complex. And then the inferiority complex comes in with like, I'm okay for a little bit out in public, but then if I look at like my shoes or my pants or my clothes, or I see myself in the mirror or anything like that, I look just terrible. I look awful. Or I have my picture taken. I don't have my picture taken, So yeah.
So
I'm an egomaniac with an inferiority complex.
Well, you use interesting choice of words. I think what you're sharing is sort of this back and forth, trying to get to some reconciliation of who you are.
Six,
Sometimes you're
si-
this, sometimes you're the other. Oops.
6 minutes.
Oh,
Yeah.
6 minutes.
I don't know what that means, but so what helps you feel more accepted? Like, how do you get to a place where you feel more accepted in terms of reconciling? Like, what kinds of things occur that you kind of,
I think the best thing is for me to be alone, well, not alone, with a couple of best friends or just a best friend that I know I've known forever and has seen me like, at my worst, and they don't care what I look like.
Yeah.
And I know that.
so you surround yourself with people who see the real you
Yeah.
and don't worry about the other, and so you feel loved and comforted and like you feel good in their presence, and that balances the negative.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I suspect there are a lot of people who have that dynamic, right?
I'd imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
probably right.
And I think as we get older and our society has this whole perspective about beauty, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's just terrible. I mean, what did I see online about it earlier? I don't remember, but it just takes over the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
The whole body image and
Yeah.
the way we look at ourselves and the comparing just
Sure.
takes over the world.
Sure. And
you
our
can't-
culture, through media and television and the things we watch and
oh,
ads about the GLP drugs, right? Ads about,
yeah,
and how you get stuff on Facebook about the things you're supposed to eat, the things you're not supposed to eat, exercise, right?
yeah,
Collagen products.
everything,
Yeah. Yeah.
everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
And women are more susceptible to them than anybody.
Yeah, no, I agree
No.
with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a man can grow old gracefully
Oh,
and
can't he just get out of the shower and just be like that?
yeah, and women have to do a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, men are
I-
doing more.
Yeah.
Young men.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some ads on TV now about men selling a product, and then they show pictures of themselves wrinkled and then pictures of themselves with the product and their skin is
Yeah.
smooth.
Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah, and so now it's kind of gone to from just women to men and kind of a societal issue. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because it started out with the men's deodorant and then men's body wash, and then
yeah,
it's gotten more and more different.
yeah. I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to think of things that make me weird or that I'm a weirdo about.
Yeah, I think it's not a definition like I think generally it's anybody who's not doesn't see the world the way I see the world, or they don't dress like I dress, or they don't think like
Just
I think.
different.
Yeah, just different. And
Yeah,
the truth is, the world's a lot more interesting when you hang out with different people because you learn different perspectives. And
Yeah.
sometimes they teach you things, and it doesn't mean you necessarily change your mind, but you then develop kind of understanding and empathy and compassion, right?
compassion, yes, and
Yeah.
empathy. Yep,
Yeah.
good words.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
words. Yeah, so and you're very articulate and and you seem like
Okay,
you
friends.
probably have a lot of friends.
Let's
do.
come back together. Sorry to interrupt these amazing conversations. Would you be Vanna for me? So let's debrief a little bit. Remember, do not divulge the other person's weirdness in whatever you say. Did everyone hear me about that? Do not divulge the other person's weirdness, but you can share your own if you like. But I'm just curious, what, if anything, changed for you from before you did this exercise to right now? Sarah?
I was going to say that,
Yep.
is this on?
Yes?
That you might find that somebody is just like you.
Somebody
That
might
you
be
didn't-
just
you
like
didn't
you.
know until you talked.
Yes. 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 I mean, we could just end it there, right? What else? What else changed for you in the last 12 minutes?
So for me, it was sharing my weirdness / weakness maybe was very comforting because I felt very safe and trusting in this group. And sometimes when you share that and then people understand maybe what you've got going on or that might not project, then all of a sudden there's a little extra understanding and it feels good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that, right? This isn't just about like, oh, you need to be, right? That's the whole point of the series. Like, it's not just, you need to be nicer, you need to be more Jesus-like to other people. No, it's, right? It's selfish, really. Building the kingdom of God is selfish because we are making the world better for ourselves as well. What else?
Well, mine is very similar. It just felt good to talk
Yeah.
about my personal weirdness
Yeah.
topic. It just feels good just to
feels
have it
good.
out there. Yeah.
Let it out. Yeah. Good. Suzanne.
Well, like we were talking about the fact that, I mean, in talking that we're both only children, and that how in society a lot of times that's seen as weird, not having any siblings, and how that living and growing up in that kind of environment makes you notice certain things differently than other people on certain levels. And so it was kind of fun to be able to like talk to somebody who, again, we were talking about similarities and having similar life experiences, and oh, maybe it isn't as weird.
Yep. Right? The details about our own stories that are important, but we feel like we need to hide them. And why? Right? Yeah. All right. I'm going to keep moving us on so that we can at least get a little bit into into talking about foreigners. So just as a parting thought for that exercise, but don't forget that too much because this really does bleed really well into talking about foreigners. The part of you that feels weird, the parts of you that feel weird are often the bridge to someone else's belonging. If you take nothing else away, take that away, please. Okay, so now we're going to take what we learned about that to talk about groups, because that's really, if you want to go back to your regular seats, if you're fine there, if you can just keep sitting there, but if you want, all right, fine. What do we mean a foreigner? So if a weirdo is somebody we judge for being different because of something about them as individual, foreigner is just the same kind of judgment, but it's because they belong to a particular group. And those groups can be defined by all sorts of things, right? It's the typical list and some not so typical things as well. Things like age, disability and ability, religion, ethnicity, gender identity, social class, social upbringing, where did you go to university, all those right kinds of things. Parents' income versus, are you new money or old money, right? That's a North Shore thing. We know nothing about that, right? Sexual orientation, indigenous heritage, Native American, Native Canadian, etc. National origin, or origin, what is how far back, An immigrant is your family, your people. Regional origin. This is something we don't talk enough about as US Americans, I think. I had a parishioner who, I'll just say, we disagreed about lots of political things. And I didn't really understand where the disagreement came from, but the more I talked with her, the more I learned that it kind of was rooted in this sense that being in the Midwest, she always felt like she had to apologize or hide the fact that she was from Texas. And it really made me start, right? What are the things that we, as Illinois people, say about people from
Sorry,
Texas?
Susan.
Or from the South generally,
sorry.
right? What are the judgments we make based on people's accents, right? It's a thing. It's a thing, folks, right? But then we might also think about, so these, the categories on the left, the reason there's a kind of a dotted line there is that these tend to be things where there's a power differential in society or a cultural preference for one group over another, right? We don't need to belabor that point because this is the history of being in the world, being in this country, right? We can get into the details, but that's what it just is the case, right? But then we can also talk about affiliation in groups where that's less the case, like political affiliation. Now, one party might be in power at a particular point, we can talk about that, but generally, being Democrat, Republican, say, if we want to parse it that way, right? There isn't that kind of historical power imbalance. Or like subcultures, like Star Trek fans and NASCAR, right? We might have judgments about people who affiliate with particular groups based on interests they have, or, there's a lot to dissect about gun culture and how that plays into the kind of heady debates we have about the Second Amendment and gun control, and how much of that actually more deeply is because guns have been historically important to particular people's families and their recreation, right? And that's where that debate actually probably lives, or at least that conversation lives. Okay, so we can talk about all sorts of groups. And obviously that gets into all sorts of complicated and difficult and thorny issues. In the 7 minutes I've got left, I'm going to apply just one very narrow lens to one way of entering into those kinds of conversations and into disrupting that circle of judgment when it comes to people who identify as foreigners, which again is just based on people's what kind of group they belong to. And it goes back to what we were talking about last week with Weirdos, which is that amygdala reaction, that threat response reaction. Something is different, and our brains are hardwired to assume that thing might be a threat. And so we get that immediate reaction, and that happens really fast in the brain. And then the more reasoning parts of our brain are slower to catch up. And by the time they do, they might just believe that threat response and then justify that threat. That's the cycle we talked about last week. And then those judgments get reinforced. We can, for one thing though, we can come at that threat response from a different angle and just appreciate the fact that any time we talk about things like this, that we talk about race, gender identity, sexual orientation, political differences, that our amygdalas might get activated right in that moment, right? It's threat response to the topic itself of group difference. So you might hear these ism words. When I was first hired here, I got very wise advice that don't use ism words because that activates people. And I took that to heart. I'm like, okay, well, we can talk about things and not use those words if that's really activating people. But just appreciating in ourselves and appreciating in others that this might be happening. That when we even bring up this topic, right, people feel like they're attacked, they feel like they have to attack, or they feel like they need to flee. Does that make sense? Okay. So, but then we can also think, right, in the same way that we talked about weirdos and the threat response, that group identity, right, and the ways in which social rules, instincts, personal experience, also just history, cultural representations of people in that group, all of those complicated factors are kind of programming our amygdala or setting us up, right? It's all inputs into our brain into what might be or might not be a threat. And that decision, threat or not threat, is again happening really, really fast and not happening in the part of our brain that feels like us. Again, if we judge somebody as a weirdo because of something that's different about them individually, we identify somebody as foreigner because they represent a whole group, and that's how we might redefine the idea of stereotyping, right? We experience something that's different in an individual, I'll just say that again, in an individual, and then say that individual must represent that whole group that they're a part of. But the same cycle then still happens, right? Threat, that's weird. Rationalization, that's wrong. But then it's unexamined stereotype and not just unexamined individual judgment. Then avoiding members of that group based on that, and then confirming, right? We talked about confirmation bias last week. Now, any interaction with anybody in that group confirms my stereotype, because I will only take in the data that confirms my stereotype, and then it just keeps getting stronger and stronger. So if threat response is one way of kind of unpacking and kind of breaking up that circle of judgment around foreigners, then there's a question that I want to raise for all of you of who is responsible for managing my amygdala? Who is responsible for managing my threat response? Okay, Barb is pointing at me, right? That makes a lot of sense. Yes, right? We're all responsible, right? Responsible for my own emotional reaction, yes, okay. If I point a gun at you, Barb, sorry to be, and then you pull out yours, right? Right? Point being that there are certain cases, right, extreme cases, where I actually am responsible, right? If I threaten somebody and they apply deadly force back to me because they felt threatened, right, I had some responsibility for their amygdala reaction, right? And oh boy, now we're getting into like all sorts of thorny things like police and suspect interaction, right? Self-defense claims. Even you might say the war that we're currently in, right? When is that threat legitimate, right? And how do you tell the difference? I don't have an answer for that. Maybe save that for the legal scholar who's coming next week. But that's, right, it'd be, when we're feeling safe, it feels okay to say, oh no, I will take responsibility for my own amygdala reaction, right? And we want to say that. And also, and even in less extreme cases than that, right? It can be skillful and helpful to proactively manage somebody else's threat response. The thing, so for instance, in the newsletter this past week, I had language around, I said what we were going to talk about, and I also said this is going to, it touches political issues and political controversies happening right now, and also, doesn't matter your party affiliation or your political perspectives, you should walk away with something that will feel hopeful and helpful to everybody, right? That was intentional. That was intentionally me managing potentially other people's amygdala responses. That if we're going to talk about judgment across groups, that people might feel like they're being attacked because of their political beliefs, right? So it can be skillful, and it comes at a cost. We've all heard the word assimilation, right? Generally thinking of assimilation as if you're in a minority group, right? You try to be part of, somehow get a sense of belonging with the larger group, the minority group into the majority group. So, right? How many of us have ancestors not that far away who spoke a language other than English? Right? How many of us dressed a certain way on the job that we wouldn't necessarily have dressed at home or when we were hanging out with our friends, right? These are examples of assimilation. We can use the amygdala to think about assimilation. What assimilation, one way we could think about assimilation is that when the members of the minority group try to manage the majority group's amygdalas. And we kind of talked about this last week too with covering, right? If you're in the LGBTQ community, that you're proactively doing things that make you less threatening to the majority group. Intuiting, you might not know anything about brain biology, but you're intuiting that they will have an unreflective negative response to me if I don't do things proactively to make myself less threatening to them. I call this the slippery slope of assimilation because on the one hand, it makes sense. The things that the folks are saying there, this is how I and my group will be accepted, right? Learning English will get my group ahead. It did. This is how we can live in peace. Being able to speak the same language, yes, that can make relations a lot easier. And also, again, it comes with a cost. Losing group distinctiveness. Peace really means just making it safe for the majority. We have never really been accepted because I might learn the language, but there might be other differences about me that if I don't cover those as well, then that same threat reaction, all right, I can never do enough, is another way of putting that. I can never do enough to make myself non-threatening. You follow me so far? We're a little bit over time. Can we extend like 5-ish more minutes? Okay. Sorry about that. So being non-threatening is a skill and a tool for achieving social goals. It is. And it's something, right? Remember all those groups. We all have a membership in some group. I'm going to say that again. We all have a membership or have had a membership in some group that is not the majority or not the group that's favored by the wider culture. Because we have all been children, for one thing, and we will all grow old. And those are both two ways that age are not favored in our society. So this really does apply to everybody. Being not threatening is a skill and a tool for achieving social goals if you have a membership in one of those groups. It can also be a tool if you are in the majority, and we're going to talk about that in a second. And my argument is that being non-threatening, managing other people's amygdalas only really builds grace if it helps others build their own awareness and skills for managing their threat reaction. So again, for instance, doing something that's non-threatening to bring people into the same space, have the same experience, have a conversation like this, and then do the thing that I'm about to do, which is, or have already done, is to help bring awareness, right? About that this is something that's happening in all of our brains. Give you a practice for being aware of that. Okay, any questions? Comments? That's a lot. It's a lot to take in. We can go over this a little bit more, not next week, but the following week too, when we talk about victims. Okay, so, get some folks to hand this out. We're not gonna practice this. This is just for you to take home. Oh, online folks, 1 second. Oh, did you get it? Yeah, I get it. Okay. So the promise of this whole series is that I try to extract some practice from the gospel story that we read for the day. And today the story was, of course, Jesus and the Samaritan woman at Jacob's well. And so very cleverly, if I say so myself, I have given you WELL as an acronym. You have no idea how much I like was trying to think of all the W words and like how to shoehorn this in. But I feel okay about it now. So this is a simple practice that's specifically for if you find yourself, and hopefully, I'm hoping you actually will notice this happening to you more now as you walk through life. You notice yourself having an amygdala reaction. And you know that because there is some person who is in a group that's different from your own, and despite yourself even, you find yourself avoiding them. Oops, sorry. You sit at a different table, you move to the other side of the sidewalk, you go to a different, whatever it is. And it could be all sorts of different situations. But you notice that this has happened to you. And remember, not judgment, right? It's the brain. We can't help it. It's just there. But we can do something about it. We can manage our own amygdalas. So the simple process, wait first, right? Just notice that happened. Check in on your feelings, because that's always a good option. Goal is not to eliminate what you're feeling. The goal is simply to stop and allow yourself enough time for the rest of your brain to catch up to that initial response. That's the wait, right? Because remember, the amygdala works a lot faster than the stuff up here. Just give yourself time. Enter anyway. Jesus enters Samaria. If there is some space that you're sharing, right? There is a table where you can sit down next. It's appropriate to sit down next to somebody who belongs to a different group than you. Enter, right? You notice you had the reaction, and then you enter anyway, going against that instinct to withdraw. And then, okay, for the two L's, I want you all to do this, and then this. It's lean in, and then lean back. This beautiful story in the gospel is not just Jesus lecturing this woman. It's a conversation. It's a back and forth. And some of the most important words that are said about revealing God's good news are said by the Samaritan woman, not by Jesus, right? So you lean in with curiosity. You go from a posture of judgment or a posture of having to defend yourself or feeling threatened to a posture of what can I learn in this moment? But don't overthink it, right? Make it conversational, but ask questions, find out more about the person, get to know, it's the typical stuff, right? But if you're feeling threatened, you need to intentionally, you might even physically, right, lean in a little bit, but don't, scare them. Tell me all about yourself, right? Don't do that. But then just as important is to then lean back and let them talk. And let them talk without interruption. And like we did with the weirdo exercise, you respond with appreciation and more curiosity. Does not require interpretation, comment, judgment, rationalization, anything like that. Just appreciate. And then let the conversation end naturally. Okay, that's enough for today. Thank you all.